All right, today is Wednesday, August 15, 2018. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes CSI Implementation Group. We're going to go through the items in the agenda. First up are the tasks for 1.12. First task that we're tracking is kubelet device plugin registration mechanism moving to beta. There's a handful of tasks here. Some of them are being driven by external folks, and some of them are being driven by our internal team. Vlad, do you want to give an update on this?
So we're at the same update as last time. I haven't looked at the proxy approach yet to see if it's something we will be doing or if it's just the documentation approach that we're just going to document how things should be done.
Okay.
On my to-do, I saw that, I think last time we talked, Renault had some updates on that PR.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to take a look to see what those updates are and how they may or may not impact what we already have.
Okay. When you get a chance to look at those, just put the PRs here for reference, and that way we can keep track of them.
Yep, we'll do.
Cool. Thank you. CSI driver registry, looks like the only feedback that's remaining is around whether we should have a ready field or not. Excuse me. Jan, are you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
So initially when I put ready in, I was thinking whenever the driver creates it and they're ready to serve, they set it as ready. But I think you have some good points in like, what if the driver becomes unready? How do they, what do they do? It would be nice to be able to have some sort of timestamp. And at this point, I haven't really thought through those use cases. So I'm wondering if it's better to just not put it in and then add it in later as we think through those use cases, or add it in now.
Later.
Yeah. Do we have any consumer of this ready status?
No, not for the initial release.
Yeah. Sure.
The only weird thing is if I remove ready, I have to remove CSI driver status because there's nothing else in there. And so then we'll have a spec but no status, and I don't know if that's okay or not. I think it should be okay. I think I recall seeing something like this, but it's a little unusual.
I think snapshots have status, spec and no status.
Yep, that's the one, I think. So I think we should be okay. I'll do that. And then if API reviewers complains, we can think about it more.
Yeah, it's good enough for alpha, probably.
Yeah. So next steps here are API review. So consider this pending. Next item on the agenda is new node status field for CSI drivers.
Yeah, so I talked to Cheng and updated his proposal for the topology things, because I don't think it's useful to have a proposal for a new API without using the API. So he put the API into his proposal. It's there and it's ready for review.
Awesome. Cool. So I think, what is the current proposal? Is it using cluster registry?
No. It is using the shadow node we talked about. I called it CSI node info.
Okay. Got it.
Because it doesn't have any status, it doesn't have specs, so I call it info.
Okay.
And there will be array of drivers installed on node and topology keys for the node for the driver and the name of the node for the driver.
Okay.
And each node will have its own instance.
Cool, cool. All right, perfect. That looks good. So that's ready for API review. And then the next item is do not require attach, which maybe we should just merge in with the cluster registry one.
Maybe. I don't know.
Actually, it's big enough that let's leave it as separate.
Yeah.
How's the review looking on this?
I got
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I got a couple of comments, but nothing serious.
Okay.
Update downgrade is problematic, of course.
Sorry, which is problematic?
Upgrade and downgrade, like.
Yes.
Yeah, changing the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there is one thing I don't like about the proposal, that you don't really skip attach and detach. You just don't create a volume attachment, and we don't require the external attacher. But all the CSI volume must go through attach detach controller. So it sees that there's nothing to do and marks the volume as attached immediately. But kubelet must wait for this to happen.
Why doesn't kubelet also look at the driver object, and if it doesn't require attach, immediately start?
This will lead to races when upgrading and downgrading Kubernetes, or when creating the CSI driver object. Like different components will have different view on the world, and it can be races.
So the upgrade, downgrade, so what is the worst case about the race? So the race would mean that mount could potentially start before an attach happens.
No. If the volume is attachable, then everything works.
Okay.
That's the thing. Problems are that we need something to delete volume attachment instances if the volume becomes non-attachable. Like somebody creates the CSI driver instance. Somebody needs to clean it up, and it can't be attached, or it could be attach controller, but currently it doesn't know anything about volume attachment. Everything is done in the CSI driver. But once the volume becomes non-attachable, then attach controller stops caring about the volume, and it won't call detach on the volume.
I see.
Yeah, and there was also something else. Something about the kubelet. You can look at the proposal is there.
Can we make this temporary behavior for like 1 or 2 releases, and then once we're confident, okay, now everybody's on the new versions, then we say, okay, we're going to do this in parallel? I think you said upgrade, downgrade was a problem, but the other problem...
That could work if we make the CSI driver mandatory. If kubelet can check if a volume is attachable or not reliably, and the same can do attach control, then I can make it safe.
So why does it need to be mandatory? So if I don't need like any customization, I don't create this object, then the kubelet goes to fetch it. It doesn't exist. Then you just use the default behavior, which is wait for attach.
Yeah.
If it does exist, then you skip wait for attach and just go directly to mount. So
yeah, but thing is, when you don't create the object, then you realize your mistake and create it later, but something is already mounted. And there is volume attachment existing.
So if you don't have the object, you made a mistake, then it's going to get stuck because it's going to try to wait for attach, but nothing is going to fulfill that attach. And then you create the object to fix it. You say, oh, okay, I'm supposed to have this driver object. Let me create it. You create it. And then our kubelet code is just going to say, oh, I see this object exists. I'm going to go ahead and skip attach instead of waiting for it.
Yeah, kubelet is probably fine.
But you have the dirty object. Sorry, what's that? You have the
kubelet will be probably fine. Yeah, and the volume is in attach controller state of the world. So
yeah,
I'm not sure it's really safe to remove it from there.
Yeah. We could like put in logic that'll periodically check and see if the object becomes available and do like a garbage collection. It's ugly, but it works.
Which object we're talking
The
about?
volume attachment object.
Oh, volume. Okay.
Because if somebody doesn't set the driver object, or they don't create the driver CRD, and then volume attachment proceeds, it's going to create the volume attachment object, and then actually no, it should just clean up itself. So let's say the volume attachment object gets created, and then the person creates the CRD for the driver, and then the mount gets unblocked, the mount continues, the pod starts, and then eventually at some point the pod is going to get deleted. The pod deletion event is going to come to the volume attach detach controller. The attach detach controller is going to remove it from desired state, and as far as the attach detach controller is concerned, it never finished attaching, so it'll just go ahead and delete the volume attachment object.
I'm not sure. It needs to call CSI driver detach, CSI volume plugin detach, because that's the
no, because as far as the entry code is concerned, the only way that it has to interact with CSI is creating or deleting this object. So when it wants the attach to happen, it creates the object because it doesn't know any better. And then the user comes in and creates the CRD and says, oh, I don't actually want attach to happen, but it's too late. The object already exists. So once the pod is deleted, that's the signal to the attach detach controller that this thing is not wanted. As far as the attach detach controller is concerned, it created a volume attachment object. Nobody responded to it. So as far as it's concerned, the attach never happened. This thing is not attached. And then when the pod is deleted, it says, oh, I guess it never attached, and now it's not required, so let me just delete the volume attachment object.
The thing is that the volume attachment is not created by attach detach controller. It's created by the volume plugin.
Right.
The volume plugin. And in the middle of the process, we change the volume plugin from attachable to non-attachable. I'm not sure what the side effects it could have.
Yeah. Okay, I think these are all fair points. So I guess for the initial alpha version, let's go out with this, where we have a slight delay, and then we can think about optimizing it out in future and getting rid of these races. So okay, looks good to me. I'll take another look at it, and let's get it to API reviewers and move on. Vlad, was there something you wanted to say?
No, I just want to make sure I understand, because it sounded like if the CRD is not created, we're saying that by default it's going to be an attach.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
But if the CRD is there, it becomes automatically a...
No. If the CRD is there and it has a field that says...
Okay, all right.
It doesn't require...
Yeah. So that's what I was trying to figure out. That we need a field. Okay.
Yep. All right, cool. Thanks, John. Next up is inline volume support. So I've been commenting on this a little bit, going back and forth with Tim. I think Tim had a suggestion about why don't we make all volumes go through PV. Looks like there's been a lot more discussion since.
Yes.
You guys want to catch me up on that?
Yeah, so I think Jan had kind of answered you, and K Fox was talking about something else. But I haven't seen anything that kind of invalidate where we're going with this, meaning that we need to have a one-off for direct pod attached, pod specified CSI. I haven't seen anything that has been convincing that we shouldn't do this.
Shouldn't do which approach?
We should not do the approach that the CR is designed for, which is
Sorry, I actually didn't look at what that approach is. Could you summarize it real quick?
Oh, the approach is update the API object so we can do pod attached CSI or direct pod attached CSI volumes. So Tim was saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't go to that extreme. Let's just reuse what we already have in view of PV, PVC, and storage classes. And you're saying, and you had replied, hey, no, we probably shouldn't because A, it's probably going to be clunky and burdensome. So as far as I'm concerned, I've started a PR locally, some code locally. I'm going to move until somebody, when we present this to review and they say, hey, this is a no-go, I'm just going to keep going in parallel.
Okay.
With this, because I don't see, there's some good cases that I think you've outlined as far as why we need to go through this and provide a volume source for CSI so we can do direct pod attachment specification.
Okay. So the proposal here, as far as I understand it, is you have inline volumes, but they're restricted using pod security policy. Is that right?
That's correct. There is a section on pod security policy.
Okay. Yeah, that was the other approach we were talking about. And that seems okay to me too. It's just another way to be able to say these are the volumes that will allow inline. So I think we just need to get Tim to agree to that, and it should be okay. Okay, cool. So let's continue to drive that, and I'll try to get Tim's attention on this and see if he agrees with it.
Right.
And the biggest drawback for having it in the volume is, or in the CSI registry, is that cross-object validation is not supported. So that means when you have a new in a new pod created, you have no way to in validation code to check whether that driver is allowed or not allowed, because you can't access the other object. So would an admission controller here be a viable option?
Probably can, but yes, can. But admissions are optional. The first point. The second one, I would expect some resistance, and we should probably use webhook, validating webhook.
Okay.
We need to do that anyway for all the CRDs.
Is there a big trade-off between the pod security policy and the cluster registry? I want to make sure I have a solid argument one way or the other. I guess with pod security policy, cluster admin has more control.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not too familiar with pod security policy. Excuse me. So I'm guessing this is something that has to be implemented as well, along with everything else we're talking about, in order for this to work, right?
Yeah, so like in the current proposal as the PR is written, it's suggesting that you add in this new inline volume stuff, but instead of letting everyone use it, you have a pod security policy that specifies which CSI drivers are allowed to use it. And so validation code would actually check with that pod security policy and verify that a given driver is allowed to be inline. If it's not, it'll reject that pod immediately. If it is, then it'll allow it to continue.
Yeah, and we have exactly the same code for flex volumes.
For
There is
flex
list of
volume.
allowed flex volumes in PSP, so we could do the same for CSI drivers.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying Flex has similar mechanism for rejection?
Yeah, yeah.
Good. So for the PSP, it's something that has to be implemented in the entry code. How would we determine which? So it just has to make sure that it is a CSI driver that is being requested to be attached in order for it to allow.
No, it has to check that one, it is a CSI driver, and two, in the pod security policy, that driver's name is specified as whitelisted for inline volumes.
Oh, okay, that's what I was getting at. So, all right. So then we will need somewhere to specify that whitelist, right?
Yep. And that's inside the pod security policy. So if you look at the PR, there's a section on pod security policy, and basically he just has a list of CSI drivers that are allowed to look at it. The pod security policy is just like a bunch of ways to restrict or give more permissions to a pod. It's an object created by the admin, and so.
Oh, okay. So it is an object created by the admin. All right.
Right.
Okay. So it is at runtime or at cluster running time. You can that list can change.
Right. Right.
Oh,
so there's already allowed flex volumes inside that pod security policy. So basically, he's just following the same pattern and saying allowed CSI volumes. I think this makes sense. Maybe in the longer term, we can also add this as a CSI cluster registry thing, maybe. I don't know if that makes sense or not, having it in both places, but I'm okay with this.
Well, so what do you mean by that? That the CSI registry would be a place to do further validation?
Would be a way to also enable this. Basically, you have two switches. You have one switch here, which is controlled by the cluster admin. And then you have a second switch inside the cluster registry, which is controlled by the driver author. So both the driver has to say, oh, yes, I support inline, and the security policy has to say, oh, yes, I support inline for this driver.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at PSP as a weak, it's kind of a weak gate, really.
Yeah.
Whereas, because we really don't know if the author really truly support inline.
Right.
Well, but CSI driver, what's the difference for the author if the volume is inline or it is backed by PV? There is no difference. The driver gets the same CSI call.
Right.
Kind of. So if you don't have the PV/PVC, some of the drivers are not going to function correctly because topology isn't handled correctly. We have like the allowed topology, requisite topology, all of that. So some drivers could misbehave.
Okay.
Ideally, I would like the switch to be in both places, but I think for an alpha version, it's sufficient to have it just here. If you want to, you can pursue both here and in the CSI cluster registry, but like Jan mentioned, if you're going to do CSI cluster registry, you can't just do traditional Kubernetes validation. You need this special webhook validation.
I would start with the PSP first because we need it for security. And we can add the driver registry flag later if we have time.
Yeah, that seems like a good idea to me.
Okay. And when the admin is specifying the PSP list for the driver, is just a string name? Is that what would that be, the proper name for the driver?
It is array of strings, yes.
Okay. Oh, okay, I see it. So then that name has to match something.
The driver name.
Just the driver name.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. This looks good to me. Also ready for API review. Glad Vlad's getting started on coding it. Next up is passing through workload information. So I made the change on the cluster registry to add a Boolean for this. And then the rest of it looks good to me. So I think we're looking.
I worked my proposal to use this field and it's on review.
Perfect. Finally, we have Csi Topology Support. So this is ongoing. Jan worked with Chang to update his PR. Chang is continuing to work on his prototype. As soon as his prototype is done, he's going to start working on the in-tree components that need to change. And that way he can get those in first. And so that's ongoing. For raw block volume support, do you have anyone working on this, Vlad?
No. Those are the further down. I have those broken out into the different issues.
Perfect. Okay.
So we can track them that way.
Sure. And then mount namespace propagation. Brad, is Fabio working on this?
Actually, Matthew is working on it. I believe I put the link on there.
Okay.
Oh. Fabio is, and he posted all the pull requests that are necessary, like website update and flipping the feature.
Okay.
Oh, my bad.
We can announce it tomorrow on the SIG storage if somebody's against, and then merge it.
So just to be clear, Fabio is working on this, or this is the PR, right?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. It's deleting a bunch of code. Shouldn't it be changing it? All right, I'll take a look at this later. But sounds good. All right, PRs that need attention. So the first snapshots PR I reviewed and merged. That was the API. The only thing that we might need to change here is currently we have data source both on the volume or the snapshot and the snapshot content. The PVC and the PV. That's actually not even part of this PR, so we're okay here. But we might need to change that. We were talking to Tim yesterday, and he suggested instead of doing validation of whether a provision volume has a specific data source by having a permanent field on the PV, we could actually have something called readiness checks, which are already a concept that nodes and I believe pods already use. And it would be similar. We can apply that concept to PVC. So the PVC has a readiness check, and the readiness checks could include a check, for example, to say the data is pre-populated, and so we're going to look at that approach and see if we can make that work. But the first PR for snapshots is reviewed and merged, and the second one is currently under review. CSI volume limits I have not had a chance to look at. I don't know if anybody else has. And then Ben's support for mount options. Has anybody gotten a chance to review this? I guess Luis and Hemant are out. Okay, so it looks like no one's taken a look at that yet. We need traction on that. Next up are bugs that need attention. This one Luis is working on, scaling issues. This is the one Matt Wong's been working on. I think the outstanding item here was the RBAC rule, which Chang was going to help investigate. We'll get an update from him at some point. CSI incorrectly sets FS group. I know Vlad had a PR out for this.
Yes, and I think Armand has been looking at it. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, perfect.
So yeah, he's been looking at it.
Cool.
So we'll get that merged soon, so I can not think about it.
And then external provisioner does not respect access mode. I would put this behind all of the work that you have because we could do bug fixes and after code freeze.
Yeah.
So that's perfectly fine.
That guy, the one you have, the second guy you have highlighted, I found somebody internal working on that.
Ah, perfect.
So as soon as we get a PR out for this, and this is what I wanted to do is update, because we had a change in FS type that is no longer required or defaults to EXT4.
Okay.
But I don't think the document has ever been updated, so I wanted to get that updated. So that's what we're doing. And then as soon as that is done, I'm going to see where I can, out of any one of these three, I can put them to start taking a look.
Awesome.
And these are kind of related to, they're not kind of, but they are related to block and other issues that hasn't been revisited since in a while.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Vlad. That sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to leave that outstanding until we have that resolved. I think Luis was going to take a look at cleaning that up. That's all I have for today. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about? All right, we'll call it for today. And then tomorrow is SIG storage meeting. We'll see you there.
All right, later.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.